Now, VCY America presents Brannon House with Worldview Matters.
Welcome, my friends, to the program. Glad you're with us. Well, CNN is reporting on their website that some evangelicals on defensive over partnering with Glenn Beck. Some evangelicals on defensive over partnering with Glenn Beck, a Mormon. And I'm the only evangelical quoted in the article. It's kind of shocking. CNN has actually quoted me in context. Brannon House, a conservative writer and founder of Worldview Weekend, which organizes Christian conferences, criticized evangelical participation in the event in a column this week. Quote, "The Apostle Paul warns Christians against uniting with unbelievers in spiritual endeavors," House wrote. Quote, "While I applaud and agree with many of Glenn Beck's conservative and constitutional views, that does not give me or any other Bible-believing Christian justification to compromise biblical truth by spiritually joining Beck," end quote. That's exactly right. I don't understand why there's a problem. Well, it didn't sit well with Glenn Beck today. I'll play the clip for you in a little bit. He referred to the article on his radio show today and said, "Here comes the religious bigotry." Well, it's kind of interesting because he said on his radio show today not to be hateful with people who disagree with us. And I've complimented Beck. I've been gracious and kind and complimentary every time I turn around. But just because I can't unite spiritually with Glenn shouldn't mean that this is religious bigotry. And I guess that's where it's now going. Beck has also come out today on his radio show, we'll play the clip, and saying that this event is about praying to one God. Joining me here in just 1 second is going to be Kirk Cameron. Kirk was invited to participate in this event tonight in D.C., and Kirk has graciously agreed to join us today to explain why he cannot go, why he is not going, and the biblical perspective on this by Kirk Cameron, and he'll be joining us in just 1 second. I do want to play, however, the clip by Glenn speaking on the issue that this is, the event is about praying to one God, because I have been warning and warning and warning that this is a pluralistic push, and evangelical pastors, unfortunately, have bought it. They have bought it. The bait, and they are, as I agree with Erwin Lutzer, what he said last week, pastors that take part in this are involved in heresy. We've tried to warn them now for over a week, and yet they aren't listening, including Jim Garlow, who was quoted in the CNN piece I'll get into later. Let's play this clip before we go to Kirk Cameron on the event from Glenn Beck, stating on his own radio show that today that this event is about praying to one God. Let's roll it.
Looking to one God is the theme.
Looking to one God is the theme. You know, maybe all of you who keep telling me, you know, but Glenn Beck says Jesus Christ, and he accepted Christ, and he's repented, and he's a Christian. Well, I've tried to warn you that I have talked to two good friends of mine who have had lengthy conversations with him spiritually, who have told me he is spiritually confused. One pastor told me that, or one individual told me that. A pastor friend of mine told me that, who talked to another leading pastor this week, and he said to this pastor friend of mine, who told me within an hour that he's spiritually confused. I talked to a pastor who was sitting in a private meeting with him and a bunch of other religious leaders who heard his testimony and said the guy never explained to us when he said he was baptized. He was baptized into the Mormon church, and so I was not sure what was going on. And all we've been saying is, Glenn, you need to be, you're criticizing the president this week about being forthcoming about your religious beliefs, and all we've said the whole time is, you've said in your own clips you're a Mormon, you said 80% of your life revolves around the Mormon temple. This is a country where you have the freedom of religion. We don't criticize you for that. We're not religious bigots. No one's saying you can't practice your faith, whatever it is. All we're saying is lovingly and as graciously as we can, Glenn, that we can't unite with you spiritually. That's all we're saying. This should not make you angry. It should not make you angry that we don't want to unite with you spiritually. I know it seems like today on your radio show you're taking it personal, but it's not. It's not personal. It's biblical. And anyway, this is turning out, I believe, to be exactly what I predicted it would be. Not only a pluralistic event, but one in which evangelical Bible-believing Christians and pastors who are taking part will be lowering the supremacy of the Scriptures in their testimony. And I think many of them are going to be sorry they've done this when it's all said and done. Because Glenn is even talking today about a rabbi that will be there tonight praying without a microphone because it'll be sundown. and uniting all faiths. Well, it's sad. It really is, because I have dear friends who are involved in this. But I can't compromise for the sake of friendship. The reality is, I'm glad I didn't get on his radio show or TV show and sell a ton of my new book, Grave Influence, because I fear it could have caused me to compromise. I mean, you know what? When you sell $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $1 million in books, and we see books going to #1 on Amazon when you get on his show, you know what? That can cause a lot of people to compromise. I'm not saying that is what happens, but I'm glad I didn't get on there, because I wouldn't want to have been put in that situation. Joining me now is Kirk Cameron. Kirk, again, has graciously agreed to come on and talk to us about this topic. Kirk, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good to be talking to you again, Brendan. How are you?
I'm doing good. You left me a voicemail yesterday, and it really encouraged me, because other than having Dr. Erwin Lutzer on here, I've had a hard time getting some national pastors to come on here and talk about this. And so I kind of feel like I'm swinging out here in the wind. And Dr. Lutzer said, well, we won't let that happen to you. So now I guess it's just Dr. Lutzer and I. But you were very kind to call me yesterday on your own and leave me a very kind voicemail. And then I followed back up and invited you to come on the program, and you graciously agreed, and I appreciate that. Tell us the background and your invitation and how this all happened and where you come down on this biblically.
Well, we've known each other for quite a few years, and I've always appreciated some of the insights that you've given to me and helped me to understand some worldview issues that I think are really lacking in a lot of churches and even colleges and seminaries today. And that is, you've really got to understand that Christianity is it centers on the gospel, and the gospel centers on the person of Jesus Christ. And if we get the gospel wrong, or we compromise or blur the lines of the gospel, then because it is the foundation for everything else, the rest of the building is going to come falling down. So my particular involvement with this event today, the Divine Destiny event, really, again, I wanted to fill you in on the details. It was kind of interesting. To my knowledge, Glenn Beck did not actually invite me to speak there. What I had heard from some of my managers was that there was plans to put me on the list of speakers, and that I should prepare for that. So I've got tickets to go down there. In fact, I was going to leave yesterday. And then there was a mix-up where apparently the administration had changed the plans around. They had cut many of the speakers from the list, and I was on that list of people who would no longer be speaking, if in fact I was going to be speaking in the first place, which really threw a big question mark up in my mind. Then I had some Christians who were giving me some concerns about saying, I'm hearing some things about this event that it may not be what you think it is. My understanding was this was going to be a great event where Glenn and some pastors were going to get together and talk about the things of God and read some revival sermons from history. And boy, that sounds great. I'd love to be there to talk about spiritual truth with Glenn and anybody who wants to talk about that. So I was honored to be considered. But then I read your article, and I thought, boy, in an age where people are so quick to want to solve social problems by blurring the lines of truth, we really do need to consider what Brandon's saying. And so I called 4 or 5 of my mentors and said, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And really, I guess the most surprising thing that I learned was this event tonight is described on its own website as being a gathering of spiritual leaders from all different faiths, essentially to unite spiritual hands and pray to God for the healing of our nation. And while on the surface that sounds great, the problem is, which God are we talking about? And can a Muslim who is orthodox in his beliefs really stand there and hold spiritual hands with a Jew or with a Christian, with a Mormon, with a Jehovah's Witness, with a New Ager, and still hold and to their beliefs and have integrity in doing so? I don't see how you can do that. So for me, I understand the truth of the gospel, and I can't stand on a stage and hold spiritual hands with people who would deny the exclusivity of the gospel and Christ, and say that we're praying to the same God. Now, as far as Glenn Beck specifically, I've met Glenn and been on his program, and he is so kind, so gracious. I've learned so much. God has used him to teach me things about politics, about the nation, about the history of our country, about the revivals in our country. Man, I thank God for what God is doing with Glenn's program. And where he is spiritually, I don't know. I continue to pray for him. I'm thankful for the times when I get to talk with him, and I hope to be able to talk with him in the future. But right now, with so much confusion running around within Christian circles about, is Glenn a Christian, is Glenn a Mormon, does he understand, is he confused, I personally don't know, and so I'm continuing to pray. And if I have time to talk with him personally, I'm looking forward to it. But for now, it's just, I've got a real check in my gut about me being the right guy to be on this stage today. And so I decided that it would probably be best for me to just wait and see how things play themselves out, because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I appreciate your humility and your honesty and talking about how, this thing has evolved from one thing to another, and thus you have been humble enough to change your position and publicly state that. I mean, that's what I appreciate about you, Kirk. Let me ask you from a biblical perspective.
Uh-huh.
As I read the book of 1 John, and 1 John chapter 1 says this book was written so you may know you have eternal life. And I see one of the things is that you're a true believer is if you reject false teaching, if you believe that only way of salvation is through Jesus Christ alone.
Yeah.
Can someone be a believer, a true person who's placed their faith and repented of their sins and placed their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, be a believer who believes we all pray to the same God? Is that not false teaching in itself?
Well, Brandon, I don't know how it was for you, but when I first became a Christian, I was 18 years old sitting in my sports car. I didn't believe the essential, doctrines of the faith because I didn't really understand all of them. I cried out to God. I said, God, if you're there, I know you see me, and I know you see me as a sinner. I've heard that you sent a Savior, and so I need him. Would you please save me, change my heart, and teach me the truth? And I would say at that moment, did I believe that Jonah was swallowed by a whale? Did I understand eschatology or epistemology or ecclesiology? I really didn't. That's something that I learned over time. And so I want to be careful not to, jump on somebody if they're in the throes of understanding the truth of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we can't condone heresy. We can't condone false teaching. But I think we need to give God room to move in people's hearts if, in fact, that's what's happening.
Hold right there. Joining me is Kirk Cameron talking about why he won't be at Glenn Beck's Divine Destiny. We'll continue more with Kirk Cameron right after this.